Good morning or afternoon, scrappers! It is I, Master Mimic, and welcome back to another episode of Roaring D20s, my little show where I sit here and talk about all things D&D related. So today I wanted to do something a little different. I decided that to keep with the spirit of Dungeons and Dragons, I wanted to talk about one of my many inspirations when when I'm going into a game and I'm GMing and, just every GM in the world is going to have a variety of books and movies and video games that they're going to pull from. I mean, I can't tell you how many names that I pulled from Skyrim because I had a nation of werebears that had a very Nordic feel to them. So, yeah, thank you, Skyrim, for that little inspiration. But that's not what I'm here to talk about. I'm actually here to talk about a movie that, to me, is kind of like a guilty pleasure. I know a lot of people don't like it. I mean, me and Batty are among those who went to see it, and we actually had a huge blast. Funny enough, this is going to be blasphemy to some people, but the movie is King Arthur, Legend of the Sword. This movie was directed by Guy Ritchie, and a lot of people remember it as that movie where the guy from Pacific Rim played King Arthur, and Jude Law was the bad guy. Oh, and it was directed by the guy who did those Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock Holmes movies. Yeah, to us, it's like I said, it's a guilty pleasure. I know that it's not perfect. I'm not going to ever say it's not perfect. But I thought it was a decent film, at the very least. I could see where they were going for. I can see what they were trying to do. Personally, I think that the movie suffered a lot from the fact that they were banking on 6 films to follow this thing. And I kind of felt like, as a result, you get this impression that that is where the studio's mind was. It was going, let's just get this out there so we can do a King Arthur MCU, basically. But for the life of me, when we went to go see it, we were actually on our way to the movie theater to see Wonder Woman, and we get a text from my mother-in-law because my mother-in-law and my father-in-law had just gotten out of seeing this movie at another theater, and she was saying, "Oh, you guys gotta see King Arthur. You gotta see King Arthur." I was a little skeptical because, unfortunately, I was among those people who, I heard the reviews, I saw the Metacritic score, I saw the Rotten Tomatoes, and I was like, oh, I don't know. Not a lot of people are saying this movie's that great. Maybe, but my wife was very, Batty was very like, come on, let's just, I mean, like she put out there, she goes, you're not even a fan of the DCEU, so it's either you're going to be miserable seeing that movie, or maybe we might be miserable seeing this movie. I'm like, okay. We went to go see it, and we actually had a blast watching this movie. Honestly, I'm really shocked that not more people really like it. I mean, again, I know why people didn't like it, but I'm not one of them. I see the potential in it. But like I said, I understand that they put the franchise before the movie. It's like The Mummy all over again, And let's see, just for the record, I actually ended up really liking Wonder Woman. We rented it off Redbox eventually. Did not like the third act, though. That was that's pretty dreadful. Anyways, so you're probably wondering, okay, how does King Arthur, Legend of the Sword inspire somebody? How is it, how do you look at this and go, nice, Well, I would say, first of all, the music is a huge contributor. Sometimes when I go out to do, I like to go for walks, I'll go for like 2 to 3 hour jaunts around the neighborhood where I just brainstorm. And I just found that the music by Daniel Timberton, I think Timberton, I hope that's how you say his name. I just find the movie's music, the score, is phenomenal. Easily one of the most overlooked and underappreciated soundtracks I have ever seen. I would say it's almost as I'll say it's almost as bad as, actually no, it's worse than, it's worse in terms of being underwritten. Oh God, I'm rambling here, but it's worse when compared to the Queen of the Damned soundtrack. For those who somehow don't know that soundtrack, if you are a fan of metal or dark rock, you got to listen to it. It's phenomenal. But this soundtrack is, at least I've heard people say, the Queen of the Damned soundtrack was freaking awesome. But then I try to bring up, oh, well, what about Daniel Timberton's score for King Arthur, Legend of the Sword? Nah, that movie wasn't that great. Yeah, Queen of the Damned was horrible, but, come on. Alright, so, yeah, looking at the movie is kind of, I liked how someone described it as it was like a heavy metal interpretation of King Arthur. I do not understand where that comes from, but again, I gotta stop reviewing this movie. I just gotta focus on why it inspired me. Well, I would say one of the first things that I really liked about the movie was the way they portrayed the Black Knight, or I think they just call him the Demon Knight in this. Sorry, I'm just going through my notes here. Yeah, they basically just call him like the Demon Knight, which very confused me a little bit, because I'm going, why can't you just call him the Dark Knight or the Black Knight? That's, I think that has to be whatever. So basically, this knight is just clad in black armor, except he's bare chested and just has all these huge scars all over him. His helmet has this devil horn, but like skull, visage. And you have the burning red ember eyes underneath it. His cloak was like, it was weird. It was like, I remember it was like smoke emanating from his shoulders, but it had like flames in it. So it was like a burning cloak, but it was mostly smoke. It was really interesting. But mostly it was his double scythe. That this was like one of the first times I've ever seen a King Arthur movie that really went all out with just making some of these weapons look really cool. And this guy's double scythe was just so awesome. It just so happened that Batty at the time was playing a character who used a scythe as her main weapon. Well, that kind of inspired me to make her a double scythe, and she knew exactly where it came from, And the thing about the Demon Knight was it would eventually go on to inspire other enemies. For example, there was a sequence in one of my adventures where the players journeyed into a place called the Inferno, which is basically just our version of hell, or the hells. The Inferno was, in the Inferno there was a demon that was, what was his name? It was Ulrich Death Rage. And yes, there was that fun joke. Is that a given name, or what is that? But so I had Death Rage kind of portrayed a little bit like this, except obviously instead of black armor with the helmet and all that, it was his actual face. He's a demon. Got to make him look as inhuman as possible. And I was just describing the way he looked, and I made him this powerhouse. Like, he actually did do a decent number on the party before they managed to beat him. But yeah, it was very much inspired by the Demon Knight in this. But I think what I had the most fun with is there is this movie's interpretation of Excalibur. In this movie, Excalibur is, like, the way they portray Excalibur is that for once King Arthur has to earn the sword. I know a lot of people out there might say, I remember there was a review where the guy said something along the lines of, "This movie's interpretation of this legend of the source material takes what made the original so fantastic and just ruins it." And I'm thinking, wait, the original source material? You mean the hundreds of year old epic that someone in Britain wrote? Like, really? This there's the, People call it Arthurian legend for a reason. There are scholars who follow this, and you're saying, "Oh yeah, the original was such a classic." I'm sure this guy couldn't even read the original interpretation of King Arthur. But anyway, so I do remember though that Excalibur it's in a lot of movies, obviously, but I remember even in what the heavily condensed, translated epic of King Arthur, you can basically pick it up at any bookstore now, or Amazon. I don't think any bookstores are open, and I just dated this video. Anyway, so, yeah, Excalibur has always been portrayed as this powerhouse weapon. You pick this thing up, if King Arthur picking this thing up is meant to be an achievement. This is a legendary action. Obviously, because no one else is going to draw the damn thing from the stone. So when the one dude who does it, he's a legend. But King Arthur's legend, Excalibur was, it was a powerful sword, but this movie portrays Excalibur as a god tier weapon almost. The first time that Arthur draws it from the sword, it actually overwhelms him and he ends up collapsing. Like, its power is so immense and it does such a huge mental toll, it just knocks him out completely. There's there's no just picking it up and, "I am now the King of England." It's, no, man, you gotta prove you're the King of England. You gotta earn this sword and become the King of England. So, this movie has a slightly different interpretation. Okay, I say that very in bold, underlined, arrows pointing to it, interpretation. That, basically, this movie is a typical, the evil rebellion versus the evil empire kind of thing. Where you have King Vortigern, but I swear to God, though, in the movie they call him Vortigern. So that's what I'm going to call him. I'm going to call him Vortigern, because saying Vortigern just, I don't know, it just makes me laugh. But, Vortigern. So he's now, he's the King of England. And he sees Arthur as, "Oh, he's a threat to my power. I must defeat him. I am I am I am actually the demon knight who killed his father, and I must defeat him before whatever." And him taking Excalibur, shows that Arthur is the descendant of Uther Pendragon, the original king that Vortigern had murdered. Oh, goodness. Anyway, so what was great about this movie was it felt like it does very much give Excalibur this sense of wonder, like, this isn't just a sword, like, it's not just a badge, just because King Arthur walks around with it. This movie tries to say, just because he has it on his scabbard doesn't make him the king. He needs to earn this power. And like I said, this sword is portrayed as incredibly powerful. The problem, though, is that you need to kind of have I believe they said something along the lines of, you need to have like a clear mind. You need to have this, you need to basically face who you are inside in order to wield it. And because Arthur had basically had no memory of his royal legacy, and that he was raised by prostitutes in Londinium, he has no idea what he is. So this sword just, oh man, this thing kicks. Oh, pass out. So what I really liked about this movie's interpretation of Excalibur, though, is that the movie does put a lot of emphasis on when Arthur unleashes the sword's potential, like its full power. This thing can carve a whole army apart if need be. I mean, even in the beginning of the movie, where they have what's his name, Mordred, besieging Camelot, and you have Uther Pendragon, taking Excalibur into battle. Yeah, that sword feels really powerful. I mean, you get this impression just from the fact that there are these giant elephant-style war elephants attacking Camelot, and then they're describing how Mordred had single-handedly plunged all of England into war. You get this impression that this is a powerful weapon, but it's all about who also wields it. So when you so obviously that's essentially why Vortigern, basically he had his plan and to usurp his brother. He became the Demon Knight, and he killed him. But unfortunately, he lost Excalibur, which thank God. But yeah, when Excalibur is being wielded, it is essentially no one can touch you. You're just in the middle of the swirling storm of magic, and you're just attacking everything in sight in the blink of an eye with a sword that's crackling with lightning and power, and laying waste to whole armies in like an instant. And it's really cool. I'm shocked that no one else knows about this movie. But I thought that was just such a great, such a grand idea. There's another place. Okay, this was actually really kind of ironic because I know this video is about my inspirations and how certain aspects of King Arthur: Legend of the Sword lend itself to aiding in my games and whatnot. But ironically, there's a place that Arthur has to travel to in order to kind of get his mind on that level with Excalibur, to prove his strength and his courage. So he ventures to this place called the Darklands. I swear to God, that is complete coincidence. I just thought that was. We watched the movie recently again, and they, you must venture to the Darklands. Oh, wow, okay. So, but what's cool though, the Darklands was actually a huge inspiration to Batty, because basically what the Darklands are is basically it's a realm where essentially everything grows bigger. You have giant snakes, you have giant bats, you have giant, you have what is it, ROUSs. You have just everything is bigger here. And so when a man ventures in there, there's obviously there's that challenge. You're fighting all these giant monsters, but the impression that you get is that they're not monsters. They're just animals that happen to be bigger. It just so happens that Arthur is small enough that they're like, hey, look, there's food. So Batty ended up making excuse me. Batty ended up making a place in her D&D campaign. It actually might show up in our upcoming series at some point. But it's a place called Goliath. And the way that she described it, it's somewhere akin to the Darklands in this movie, and say Monster Island from the Godzilla movies, like the Toho Godzilla movies. Except instead of giant kaiju monsters, it's just animals there just happen to grow bigger, like wolves, for example. I think she said they're like the size of horses. So they're not ridiculous. They're not like giant, oh my god, The wolves aren't like Ralph from the Rampage movie. They're huge by our standards. But then there's also this, but you get, chameleons there are actually the size of elephants. Just everything grows bigger there. And as a result, Goliath is seen as a place of wonder and incredible danger. But if you go there, it's seen as also a rite of passage for some, tribal civilizations. You travel to the land of giants and slay one of the great titans, that kind of thing. And after seeing the sequence in the movie, I'm actually really excited. Because I play in her D&D campaign, and right now we're actually doing a seafaring adventure. So I'm actually curious if we're going to end up actually landing on Goliath at some point. Oh, okay. What else? What else? Well, I did do a sequence in the Inferno where everyone had to face their greatest fear. They were looking for this gauntlet that is essentially like it's a piece of a collection of armor that if you collect all the pieces of it, it can essentially render a mortal completely like godlike, essentially. But this gauntlet, which I called Horror's Hand, people who know Grim and Mandy or Billy and Mandy right now are just snickering to themselves. Horror's Hand forces you to face manifestations of your greatest fear, and one of these scenarios was Batty's character facing down herself, where because Batty's character, let me just real quick, her character she was infected with this curse, where I say infected because it's kind of how we treated it. It was like a virus, but her mother's soul had infected her and was slowly taking over. And throughout the game, we would even do these sequences where her mother would temporarily take control of her body and try to, sabotage whatever plan they were doing, because her goal was to take over the character's body, while the character was trying to destroy her mother. So, in this character's their great fear scenario, their sequence, they were basically facing down a scenario where the mother had taken over the body, was standing over the burning remains of her entire, criminal empire, her friends dead at her feet, and she had to fight her mother, who at this point also had gained control over all of her weapons. Batty's character has a bag of infinite holding, so yeah, she has basically a huge arsenal, like a kingdom's worth of legendary weapons in there. You say it's broken, but understand they're very high level. Anyway, so this sequence was actually very much inspired by a couple of scenes in the movie. There is a scene where Arthur is given a vision of what happens if Vortigern wins. He sees England destroyed. He sees, the world just burning. He sees that basically Vortigern rules completely unopposed. Maybe wielding the power of Excalibur. You don't know. You just know that if Vortigern wins, people gonna die. And there is also a part where Vortigern is facing down Arthur, and he and it's the final battle where Vortigern once again takes the body of the Demon Knight and fights King Arthur. And it's like they show two different scenarios. This is a part that kind of confused me. But there's a scenario where Arthur loses, and it's kind of like there's a stretch of the battle where Arthur is just getting the crap beaten out of him. Excalibur just isn't being wielded right. He's just getting batted around by this knight, and is basically on his doorstep, on death's doorstep. And then he gets a vision from his father, fight, son, fight, and then he rises to the occasion. But the movie does almost like a backtrack. Like, it rewinds time and shows a fight scene where things actually went, perfectly for Arthur. Like, he easily defeats the knight. He kills him, frees England happily ever after. So this was kind of inspired by that as well, because what I did was towards the end of the game, uh, the character had to face down the embodiment of her mother's soul, like actually fight in like a contest over who could control the body. And I described it as it was a very similar scenario as what she saw when she was facing the Trials of Horror's hand. Obviously, this was just the mother trying to break her will, showing her these visions and whatnot. These are her greatest fears and what and so on. Excuse me. But where before, she had a hard time fighting her mother and defeated her ultimately and was able to accomplish the Trial of Horror's hand. In this fight, though, the character knew what she was doing, and, well, it was also the help of the dice. But ultimately, this second battle, kind of like like I said, the redo of this fight was completely in Batty's character's favor. The mother did not stand a chance. So I actually thought that was like I thought that sequence was actually really cool. You don't. I've heard some people call Arthur in this movie a Gary Stu, and I do not understand why. This dude gets beaten down. This dude does not earn. He's not given anything. He has to earn everything. Even the Knights of the Round Table, when he meets them, like they had Bedivere. I think yeah, there's a lady there who is an acolyte of Merlin, who oddly enough doesn't actually appear in the movie anywhere. That was very strange. Let me see. Yeah, Sir William played. Yeah, Sir William, who's played by the guy who played Aidan Gillen, who played Littlefinger. I thought that was kind of funny. But yeah, so you had so you have the Knights of the Round Table, but when they first meet King Arthur, they're not cool with him as first. They're not like, they're not like clasping his shoulder. You are our hope, Arthur. They actually don't really like him that much. They act like, whatchamacallit? They act like he is their only hope, and they hate that. They hate that a lot. And like I said, that's an interpretation of King Arthur that not a lot of people have ever seen. I mean, I swear at this point, I mean, compared with this movie, and then that horrific Hellboy remake they did, the Arthurian legend is kind of getting their teeth kicked in right now. I mean, the critics eviscerated this movie, but Hellboy eviscerated the legend. Ugh. Where was I going? Oh yeah, but so what I really liked about that though is that this was also a great movie to show that here's a character who has lofty ambitions, but he never wanted to be king. He even tells Vortigern, "Look, I don't want it. I don't want the throne." But it was Vortigern who pushes it. He's the one who's really trying to, I need to murder my nephew so that I can become king. So you kind of get this feeling like he wasn't actively trying to be king. He kind of was forced into it, but then he chose to accept it towards the end. And I really liked that interpretation. Hell, I just like that idea of a character. I mean, this movie could even be seen as a great way of portraying like a character going from level, say, 5 to level 15 or something. You have a party of adventurers, you have his solo story. I mean, you would have had solo stories for everybody if the movie had taken off, but whatever. But yeah, but eventually, yeah, so this movie, not a lot of people will, turn to this as like, oh yes, my adventure was accomplished by the Guy Ritchie masterpiece of King Arthur, Legend of the Sword. But obviously, I'm not going to say that my games have been infinitely better ever since I watched this movie. But I mean, there are sequences in this film that just, for a GM, especially if you're in that creative mood, it just gets the mental cogs turning, man. Like, wow. I mean, even the they have these siren creatures that they make a deal with Vortigern. They're the ones that turn Vortigern into the Demon Knight. Uh, those creatures alone could make for some fantastic villains in a potential D&D campaign. You know, these like sea witches that and apparently okay, what's really cool was the first time he meets the siren, she's this obese Ursula, the sea witch looking woman with, you know, she even has like the tentacles and everything. Um, she makes a deal with Vortigern, but needs to, you know, he needs to sacrifice his wife, you know, someone dear to him, in order to become the Demon Knight. And so you find out later when he goes to consort with the sirens, because Excalibur has shown itself, and basically that means the, you know, I think it was called the Born King has come again, or his power is threatened. He goes to the siren, and now the siren is accompanied by a skinnier one that resembles Vortigern's wife, and I just thought that was so freaking cool. I mean, there was another woman there too in the first encounter. So you're just wondering, okay, who the heck is this person? You know, how many times has Vortigern taken this, you know, this deal? So, so I thought that was cool. Is that like every time somebody gives the siren a soul, it manifests as like, because they all talk in unison. They're not like individual, or they're not individuals. They're like a hive mind. So it's kind of like as you give your soul to them, another siren appears, but it has the visage of your loved one, and like, my God, just that alone has so many possibilities. Mordred at the beginning, I mean, just like his whole deal there is that it's a war between mages and normal humans. I guess mages are their own race in this. I don't know. And he has something to do. Like, I guess Merlin was considered a good mage, but I'm really shocked Merlin did not have any part in this movie. I guess they wanted to kind of, you know, they had to set him up as, I don't know, maybe he's meant to be the Nick Fury of this universe that they try to do. I don't know, but yeah, just Mordred's opening siege, just on its own, could be seen as the ending of a long-running campaign, and Uther Pendragon facing him down is one of the player characters. Like I said, people sometimes, like, I'm not gonna say that I'm not a victim of this. I do look at reviews and I do go, you know what, they probably got it right, you know. But we've seen plenty of movies that, you know, we like in our own way, even if they're bad. Like, okay, we actually like I, Frankenstein. I'm not going to go out waving a flag saying, yes, this should have been the next big Universal monster movie. No, no, no. I know I, Frankenstein is trash. I know it is. I know the ending to that movie blatantly ripped off the ending to Van Helsing, which in of itself isn't the greatest movie. Hold on, just a quick water break here. Agua. So, actually, I think Van Helsing and I, Frankenstein actually might end up as an episode of this, you know, another inspiration thing. Like I said, sometimes you find inspiration and, like, everyone cites, okay, I'm not going to bash it, but everyone cites The Lord of the Rings or The Chronicles of Narnia or The Legend of Hercules, I don't know, as major sources of inspiration for their campaigns. While I honestly find a lot more inspiration in the smaller movies that a lot of people overlook, you know? Because not only, like, okay, this movie had a great idea of Excalibur. It's an extremely powerful weapon, but the character who gets control over it needs to go on kind of a quest to, I guess, increase their wisdom. I don't know, increase. But what else? I, Frankenstein. the guy's baton weapons are actually pretty cool. The idea of using these crazy bladed weapons in their arsenal is that those weapons are really awesome. Van Helsing, same thing. Those I think they're called Tojo blades that he uses, the little spinning buzzsaw ones. Those things are freaking awesome. Their interpretation of the Wolfman in that movie was fantastic. If only everything else was. But so yeah, that's just to kind of give you an idea that, like I said, inspiration can come from anything, even from movies that, like, let me find it, because, like I said, I know this movie does not get, this movie is standing at a 30% on Rotten Tomatoes, and people just, they hate it. They say, oh yeah, this movie was just, but I found something to like about it, even if the movie itself was just utter garbage, I could not find a thing to like about it. At least the music could get the creative juices flowing. I mean, just again, I like that this movie did try to do something more with the King Arthur legend, that it wanted to be better and bigger than just a rehash of that Disney movie that came out, Again, I kind of wish there was a Merlin in this movie, but whatever. It doesn't really matter. So, take what you will. I mean, if anyone's actually interested in to see the movie, I highly recommend it. Like I said, just don't go in expecting, to be blown off your feet. Because honestly, I found that because we went into this movie with low expectations, we actually ended up having a great time. So I think that's, in a sucky way, that's kind of the way you have to go into it. And don't read any reviews about it. Like, for God's sake. Just go in and enjoy it. Even if it's just, it has to be for free somewhere on some streaming service, I don't know. You could probably go to Walmart or something, pick it up in the dollar bin for $5. I don't know. But yeah, so I'm going to be doing a few more episodes like this where I talk about my inspirations. I am just going to say this right now. I am going to be steering clear of the Lord of the Rings or the Hobbit. Anything that's like very obvious, because you look at Dungeons and Dragons and I swear to God, that thing was a copy and paste of like everything about Lord of the Rings. Except, in terms of, halflings, orcs, whatever. So, I might even be able to get Batty or even Balcasaurus on a few of these. Who knows? Anyways, so that was all I really had to say. Again, if you guys are if I somehow was able to get you guys interested in seeing this movie, again, I do highly recommend it. It does have that Guy Ritchie style to it that I'm a personal fan of. I kind of think Guy Ritchie takes a few hard knocks every now and then. Not saying his version of Aladdin was great. Oh, God. But I don't blame him for that, because the guy doesn't do musicals, and they made him do a musical movie. Anyway, sorry, I'm rambling. Alrighty, so I hope I was able to at least turn a few eyes towards this movie. Or at the very least, go on YouTube, go on Spotify, and find the freaking soundtrack. At the very least, that thing alone it provides all the ambiance and all the battle music that you could ever want in a D&D game. And like I said, sometimes if you just plug in, it can be great music just to write to and get inspirations from. Alright, everybody, thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you all in the next episode. Have a great one.